I feel like the story in terms of like complication, I feel like it feels really flat. I think it feels really flat, and I think it needs to have a lot more layers to it. Hi, I'm Liselle and welcome back to my channel where I talk about all things writing, traditional publishing, and a little bit of reading. And this is the May vlog. It took me a little bit to remember. I always have to take a moment to remember, even though it's literally in the month that I'm talking about. But for some reason, every single time I feel like I have to say the month before and then I get mixed up. But anyway, this month, what am I going to be working on? So I think I'm going to be working on two things. One is like definitely for sure, and the other I'm not 100% sure. So I'm going to tell you about what I'm going to be working on, and then I'm going to talk about some submission stuff. So yeah. So first, what I'm going to be working on, I'm going to continue working on the Slug book. This is an adult horror that I've been working on about a alternate version of Toronto in which slugs have become an important commodity, and we are following two women who are forced to work together to evade and also try and catch a serial killer. So that's what we're working with. And so this one I have just been like working slowly on at my kind of own pace. So I worked on it kind of like a couple days this week. And I've gotten to the point in the manuscript where everything I have left now is drafting all new chapters. So previously I've been drafting like new chapters here and there, but I've mostly been reworking and editing existing chapters. And so this whole like bottom half section was the only part that I didn't have anything kind of written for. And so I'll be doing that all from scratch. And so my plan is just to like do one single chapter per day. I'm looking for these chapters to be like 1,000 to 1,500 words. So it's not so much writing per day, which I'm hopeful will be okay and like will work out for me. In which case I can still kind of be done around the time that I'd like to be done, which is before the traveling to Kingston and Toronto that I'll talk about in a second. And then the second project I'm going to be working on is the second book in the A Mastery of Monsters series. So this is a new YA Dark Academia series that I'm having come out on July 29th of this year. The first book comes out, and so I am working on the second book because that's just how traditional publishing tends to work, is that you're pretty much working on a book kind of a year ahead. And so I am expecting to get my line edits back sometimes this month, I would assume. I've also been waiting to get my sensitivity reader feedback, which I'm going to incorporate at the same time. So I think chances are pretty high that I'm going to be doing the line edit and the sensitivity reader feedback all kind of in one edit, and I think I will be doing that this month. So that's what I'm anticipating I'm going to be working on this month, those two things. And I actually am going to be going to Kingston, Ontario, which is where the Mastery of Monsters book series is set. So I'm going to go there to do a little bit more research. Some of the things that I wanted to do kind of like when I went last time, it was off season, so I couldn't do them. So like there's a historical building is not really the right word. It's a fort. So it's called Fort Henry. And I wanted to do a guided tour there. And so the on season isn't until spring. So that's why I had to wait until now. And I figured since I'm already going, I also want to do some research for the third book. And I also want to do some promotional stuff because last time I went to Kingston, I forgot to take my advanced reader copy of A Mastery of Monsters. And so I couldn't take any pictures on campus with it. And now I will be prepared to take pictures on campus. So I will like properly do myself up a little bit so I can take like nice pictures on campus with my book, and my partner's coming with me so he'll be able to help me take pictures, and I will just deal with the deep embarrassment of people in public watching me like take pictures with my book around campus, but it's fine, it's whatever. And then we're going to be going to Toronto also after, because I have some friends that are getting married, and so we're going to go to their wedding, so we'll be in Toronto also. And so yeah, that'll be great. So that's what's going on with that. And so submission, I said I was going to talk about that. So The adult thriller that I've been working on, The Retreat. In my last vlog, I did talk about how we had done an R&R and hadn't really worked out. So we're kind of in our last round of submission for that one. So that's been sent out. And so that is now, I guess, back on wide submission. And then I want to talk about what I couldn't talk about last vlog, which is what I wanted to get to. And so what we are also doing is we are also sending out a young adult project on submission. So yes, and if you're thinking, wait, what young adult project? So that you may remember, way back when I did a proposal for a book. It was really like a series of books. I was calling it the Horror Trio. So it was a set of interconnected standalones so they are standalone books, so they could be read on their own. But if you read them together, there would be something linking all three of them. And so basically I talked to my agent and I was like, what do you think about putting this project on wide submission? Because we did submit it to my publisher originally, and for various reasons, we ended up switching over to sending them a Mastery of Monsters instead. So we felt like we were going to get a better offer and more enthusiasm for a Mastery of Monsters, and so I put together a proposal for that whip quick, and that is what we ended up selling to my publisher. That's the series I have coming out. But that Horror Trio proposal was still there, and it was just kind of like sitting there, and so I just thought, why don't we send that out wide? So for me and my agent, we have never gone out on wide submission with a proposal project, but given that I have a history in young adult horror thriller, it felt like it was a more appropriate space to go out with a proposal. And because I already have the proposal done and ready, it seemed like a great idea to be able to send that out to a kind of wider audience, and to see how that goes. It is also being sent to my publisher as well, so they also have the opportunity to get involved and potentially buy it. But we also wanted to be able to send it out wide to kind of give us the best possible chance for the best possible offer, essentially. And so basically what I did last week, without telling you, is I went through that entire proposal and I edited the whole thing. So I did one more editorial pass. We had already like edited it to like perfection, obviously, because we sent it out to my publisher, but I just wanted to do one more pass of it just to make sure I felt really good about everything that I had in there. So I did one more pass of the whole proposal package. And so what's in that package, just so you know, is there's a pitch, a one-page pitch for the first book in the series, for the first standalone, and a one-page pitch for the other two standalones. There's a separate basically section in which I'm saying what is the underlying connection between the three books. And then what I added this time is I also put an addition to say, hey, if you do not want these books to be connected in any way, you want them to be absolute true standalones, I can do that by doing X, Y, and Z, and they can be true standalones. And so this was an option I wanted to put in, considering that we are going on wide submission, so that if a publisher thinks I don't want to be on board for 3 books, I maybe only want to be on board for 1 book or 2 books, then there's the option to make them true standalones. And so that way they don't have to feel like I either have to buy all 3 or none. There's an option to buy 1 or 2 or what have you. So I added that in, and then there's also a synopsis of the entirety of the first book, the first standalone. So a synopsis of that and the first 6 chapters of that first standalone book. And the first book that I pitched is about essentially a group of 4 girls who were very close friends, and kind of in their senior year of high school, they end up ditching one of their friends who they've been friends with for a very long time. They end up kind of ostracizing her, and then at the end of that year when they graduate, they usually do this annual sleepover together, but of course the plan is to not do it with that friend that they've ditched, except that her sister kind of, who used to babysit them all, ends up kind of offering them to come on kind of an all expenses paid night in downtown Toronto, and they decide to go, and shit goes down essentially. And it's like a paranormal horror, I would describe it as. And it's set over 24 hours in Toronto. And so that's kind of the theme of each of the books in this set of books in this trio, is that they are all set in Toronto and they all happen over a 24-hour time period. And so that is basically the whole pitch of it. So yeah, so that is being put on submission this month. As of the time I'm filming this first clip, it is not yet on submission. My agent is still kind of pulling together a list and that sort of thing. But by the time you're seeing this video and it is posted, it will have been on submission. So I will have 2 projects on submission, an adult one and a young adult one. And so I'm very pleased about this because it kind of creates other opportunities for publication. And I mean, I am a full-time author, and so I do rely on my writing. I rely on book deals for my income, and so it was important to me to be able to have something out that could potentially turn into a book deal, not only for being able to share my books, but also being able to maintain my livelihood and keep being able to do this full time, because I love being able to write full time. I love that this is my full-time job, and so it's really important for me to be able to do that. And so getting to do that, I also, again, I said I submitted for a Canada Arts grant, so I've also submitted for that, but I'm not really gonna know if that works out for a long time, and it's not a guarantee either, and so I'm really feeling excited and hopeful about getting to have a new project on submission in the YA space, as well as having this project on submission in the adult space. So that was the big secret. That's everything that's going on. This has been an extremely long clip, so I will let you go here, and I will see you next week. Taking my time, messing my life, swear I don't mind. Say that you'll stay holding me close, swear it's alright. Yeah. Baby, I feel the rush, everything that you touch turns to gold. I know. Baby, I'm missing you, everything that you do makes me love you. Oh. Tell me everything. You know I'm listening. Hours pass us by. Yeah, we could talk all night. Taking my time, messing my life, swear I don't mind. Say that you'll stay holding me close, swear it's alright. Baby, I feel the rush, everything that you touch turns to gold. I know. Baby, I'm missing you, everything that you do makes me love you. Babe, I feel the rush, everything you touch. Babe, I'm missing you, everything you do. Baby, I feel the rush, everything that you touch turns to gold. I know. I actually don't know if you can tell how messy my office is at this angle, but if you can, please ignore it. I have, as I'm sure you will see in the B-roll, been doing a bunch of sewing, and whenever I'm doing any significant amount of crafting, the entire office becomes a disaster because I technically don't have enough space for all of the stuff I do in here, and so I just let stuff be everywhere, and then it's in the way, and then I regret some of my choices, but I'm here and I will clean it up either on Sunday or probably more likely on Tuesday, on the day I'm supposed to actually be working. But anyway, let's talk about writing stuff. Yes, let's talk about Slug book. So I have been continuing to just do a single chapter per day, just 1,000-word chapter. I feel like this whole like latter bit of what I have left for Slug Book is all drafting, because I don't have any material for this bit. So I've been doing that, and I do feel like the drafting is going well. It is difficult for me to, one, get motivation to draft at all. Yeah, I guess that's really just it. Getting the motivation to actually sit down and draft. I've been doing a lot of procrastinating for like an hour or 2 hours before I even attempt to write. And then yes, the actual other difficulty is like thinking what the scene's gonna actually look like, because I didn't give myself a lot of material to work with when I outlined. And so I'll have something like, finds out who the murderer is. And I'm like, awesome. What am I doing here? What am I supposed to be doing here? So I didn't really set myself up for success, but in any case, I'm plowing along. And so yeah, that's kind of just where I'm at. I'm just chipping away at that. The word count I think is going to be pretty small at the end of this. Probably going to be about 56,000 words, something like that. But I've identified, I think, my main problem, and I think somebody did comment about this, and I'm so sorry because I cannot remember who the commenter is, but if you're watching, hopefully you know yourself, had been talking about like subplots in terms of like bulking out word count. And as I've said before, I haven't been using the Save the Cat story structure for this one, and I paused and I asked myself, does this story have any subplots? And my brain went, not really. So I think that will definitely be something that will be a big part of the overhaul when I end up editing this, is like figuring out what I'm doing about subplots, because I do think that they are lacking. And I know that's also like a tactic that I employ sometimes when I'm trying to make a word count shorter, is that I will like avoid subplots, because the second I add in subplots, it immediately bulks out the story. And so I feel like I have a tendency to, when I'm trying to make a book shorter, I feel like I have a strong tendency to avoid subplots, or make them very, very small. So I think I need to like create a bit of like meatiness in subplots. And I think that subplot meatiness will fix my issues with being upset about the mystery and like feeling the mystery is like not good enough. I think it probably feels not good enough or one-dimensional, because usually the way I build mysteries out is usually there are a couple subplots contributing to different aspects of a mystery, and then it starts to kind of build and layer on top of each other. And I think because I haven't done that, I think that also is probably why it's feeling a little bit simplistic. So yeah, I think my big goal is really to just finish the drafting, take a break, and then when I get back into Slug Book later on, I'm going to be making a concerted effort to spend a lot of time working on this plotting, and just kind of like do a summary of all the chapters, and really do like a hardcore thinking about the plotting and the structure, and give myself more detail and more things to work with, and kind of put that together. And I think that'll help a lot. But yeah, I think I've accepted at this point that like what I'm doing is basically a first draft. And I know I thought it would be an edited draft, but it's really not. It's basically a first draft. So that's where I'm at. But a scene that I wrote that I thought was really cool is there's a sort of I was like, how to explain this, because it's like near the end of the book and not to spoil it, but like one of the characters sort of finds herself in a unfavorable situation, let's say, and there's a sort of like an odd reflection and an odd bit of sort of obsession coming out of it, and I really liked that scene because I felt like it was really unsettling and like strange, but without being gross, because a lot of the unsettling stuff in this book is actually gross, but I think this was like more unsettling without being gross, which is great. I also think that's something that like the back half of the novel needs a little bit more of. I feel like the slug bits have like pulled away as I've tried to like focus more on wrapping up the mystery, and I think I'd love for that to like pull back in, circle back around in a better way. So I think that'll be good. Something like that. Some like weird body horror thing probably. Again, a gross thing that I'll add in. But otherwise, I think I'm feeling pretty chill about it, and I'm feeling like, okay, let's go. And I think the whole thing of like having a new project on submission has really helped in that I'm kind of like, okay, I've got some things out there going on, let's kind of like see what happens there, and so I'm feeling a little bit more calm in my body, I think, because of that. So but the horror trio, which I've renamed, I've called it the Survivors Trilogy. Originally, like when we sent it out just to my publisher, we called it like the Final Girls Trilogy, but that never sat right with me, because like the definition of a final girl is everyone else dies and there's one girl, and I didn't feel like the stories that I had planned out were really like all true to that. Maybe some, but not all, and so I didn't really like that idea, and so I ended up changing it to the Survivors Trilogy, because of, you know, there's a certain number of survivors at the end of each book, and I felt like that was like more accurate. So that's what I've set that out on. I'll probably interchangeably call it the horror trio and the Survivors Trilogy as I go. But again, they can be complete standalones. So it may end up turning out that, you know, if there is an offer, the offer might only be for one book or two books. It might not be for all three, or it might be for all three, but the publisher might be like, I don't want these to be interconnected. I really want them to be like true standalones, and that sort of thing. I have some flexibility there. So I have kind of two options. One option in which there's an underlying connection between the three that would be revealed in a third book, and one where I don't do that underlying connection at all and they're completely separate, with perhaps little cameos from prior books, that sort of thing. So that's what I'm working with. We have a long weekend. It is the May long weekend, May run, May 2-4, whatever other things Canadians call it. I think it's Victoria Day. I don't really celebrate the monarchy, so I don't really know if there's anything like particularly official about the day. It's just a May long weekend. It usually marks like the beginning of summer for people, and so a lot of people like go to cottages and things like that. So for me, I'm staying home because I'm an indoor kid, and yeah, I would do my sewing stuff. At some point I will hopefully clean my office, and yeah, and that's pretty much gonna be it.
I don't wanna call you later. You're tearing my heart up like it's paper, and somehow you turn to a stranger. We used to work, now I'm trying to make sure that we're both on the same page. I don't want it to complicate. I know you're riding away. Is there room for us both on the same wave? Nothing breaks so clearly when there's love on the line. My best friend told me someone that I don't even like. There's nothing left to fix if you don't want me to try. Oh, why would I when you were barely even mine? Oh, why?
Hello, I'm here with a different set of glasses. Potentially no one noticed. My other ones broke. They were cheap, but they lasted for a long time. They lasted for like 2 years, and I like them way better. I actually don't like these frames at all, and these are like my most expensive glasses because I got them from the optometrist, but like they didn't have a lot of options, and I like felt pressured to like get something from them. And I think at the time I didn't realize that I could just take the prescription and go online and get better glasses. And then they were a little bit fussy about even giving me all that information, I think because they knew I was going to go online and buy cheaper glasses. Anyway, I bought these glasses from them. I don't like them. I don't know, they're fine. I just don't really like them. I think I like a bigger frame. But anyway, that's enough about my glasses. Let's talk about writing. I have finished drafting the Slug book. Very, very happy about that. It is at 57,000 words, so it is short, which is good because that gives me a lot of room to like grow and kind of spread my wings as I like go forward and like plot things properly. But yeah, let's talk about things I think I did well in this draft. I do think there are a lot of great like passages and like prose bits and like ruminations about, you know, consumerism and life and character that I think are really good. I think there's also some like awesome gross horror moments in the book. I also really do like the element I had of like peppering in like different social media stuff in between and like things from like different random character perspectives. I thought that was cool and interesting, and that was something I haven't done before. When I've done alternate POVs, it's always been like usually like a singular character. I've never kind of like jumped around to like different random characters to give their perspective, and so I did really like that. And so I think those are things that are done well. I think the characters are really engaging too, which I like. Things that need improvement in this draft for sure. I think it's just the complication and the layers. I feel like the story in terms of like complication, I feel like it feels really flat. I think it feels really flat. And I think it needs to have a lot more layers to it. And I think that's just, you know, I think about my other books. I feel like they have so many different layers and so much depth to them, and I feel like this has the potential for all that depth, but it feels like it's sitting on the surface a little bit more than I would like it to. And I think that's part of the subplot issue, and like doing a different structure instead of using like Save the Cat like I usually would, and like getting used to that and switching things around. So I think that's something definitely that needs to improve, is I want to have those layers and I want it to have that sort of depth, and I think that's something that I just need to integrate into it a little bit more. And so that's definitely something to improve. So I feel like that will come together as I like go forward and plot it and that sort of thing. So basically my plan with the Slug book for now is to let it rest for a little bit and kind of like give myself a chance sort of away from it, and then come back and do a read through of the whole manuscript, taking notes and that sort of thing, and like summarizing what's happening in each chapter as well. And then I think from there I need to like do some replotting in terms of like finding ways to add that additional depth, finding different ways to make the mystery feel more kind of like multifaceted and multi-layered, and just finding different ways to reincorporate that. I think the part that needs the most improvement too is that fourth act. So I split it into 4 acts, and I think that fourth act, because I didn't have any content for that, I feel like that is definitely the messiest, and a lot of things fall off there. I feel like the slugs fall off weirdly. I feel like a lot of the characterization stuff falls off. I feel like the horror bits fall off, and the social media, like interstitial things, that falls off completely, because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. So I think those definitely need to be improved. It definitely is a first draft. It does not feel like a polished second draft. It feels like I did a first draft in 2 parts. I did vignettes and then I did this, but I do still feel like I'm happy that I went that route, that I did the vignettes and that sort of thing, because I feel like that was really helpful in kind of like setting the prose and setting the tone. And I feel like those vignette pieces that I put together are definitely like my favorite pieces of the book. And I feel like I really liked having those. And I do like trying a different structure, even though it like made things more complicated and more difficult and I more have to find my footing this way. I am glad that I tried something out and tried to do something a little bit different with this. And I do really appreciate being able to do that. And just to kind of like try it out and experiment, and like part of that like leveling up as an author and like trying different things and like being a little bit more adaptable. I am happy that I did that. But yeah, it definitely needs some work. I think my plan for now is, I'm pretty sure, I know I've been saying for like 2 vlogs about line edits, but I'm pretty sure line edits are gonna come to me next month in June. So I'm hoping that I can do line edits while also working on kind of replotting for the Slug book, just like little by little. I'm hoping that that will work out and I'll have kind of time for that, but I guess it'll depend on how I feel as I'm doing line edits. Or I can at least do like brainstorming for the Slug book. Like I want to be actively thinking about the different ways that I'm going to improve the draft and like make things better and make things feel more dynamic. So that's kind of my plan. But for the rest of this month, we're going to be heading out to Kingston tomorrow to do my research trip stuff and all of that. So I will share footage from that and maybe like a little footage from Toronto, maybe not, I don't know. And then I will wrap the vlog out. I'll probably just kind of talk about how the research trip went and all of that, and like thoughts about the 3rd mastery book, which again feels wild to be like starting to like ideate or like more in-depth ideate the 3rd mastery book when again the 1st is not even out yet. But I just want to like be able to get all that in while I'm there. So yeah, and then if there's any like interesting sub updates or anything, I'll probably do that in that wrap up as well. But that's it for right now with the Slug book stuff.
Should've known from the start that you were a waste of an open bar towel, wiping my feet on the doormat. But there's so much of you that I just can't leave. Yeah, nothing makes it clearly when there's love on the line. Yeah, I spent time with someone that I don't even like. There's nothing left to fix if you don't want me to try. Yours. Eve at midnight. Taste your lips like Napa red wine. Wish I wasn't looking back on you, but I still do. Deja vu. Deja vu. Deja vu. It comes and goes like the pull of a wave. Here for a second and down the drain. I'm getting dizzy doing double takes. I'm overseeing you and everything, but it's too hard to ignore that I'll never not feel like yours. Oh no, holding on to someone new is the only time I feel like I'm still holding on to you. It's like an instant rewind to New Year's Eve at midnight. Taste your lips like Napa red wine. Wish I wasn't looking back on you, but I still do. Deja vu. Deja vu. Deja vu. Holding on to someone new. It's the only time I feel like I'm still holding on to you. It's like an instant rewind to New Year's Eve at midnight. Taste your lips like Napa red wine. Wish I wasn't looking back on you, but I still do. I still do. Deja vu.
Hello and welcome to the end of the vlog. I have finally returned from all of the traveling that we had compacted into like a week and a half. Yeah, it was a lot because we went to Kingston, then we went to Toronto, and then we went to Sudbury, and now we are back. So yeah, so about traveling stuff, so went and did that research trip in Kingston. That was really great. So we did go to Fort Henry, which was like a lot like emptier looking than I thought it was. So I'm really glad I went there again because I put this in the book. So I needed to go there to make sure that I could correct on accuracy, things like that. And there are definitely some things that I need to correct and shift and change when I go into these line edits for the second mastery book, because yeah, it was different than what I thought it would look like. And so Fort Henry, it's basically like it's an army fort. So it existed during a war. I cannot remember which one off the top of my head. But yeah, it's like it was a, you know, it's a little like fort, and you know, they lived in it. I think it, I don't know. You're probably like, why are you writing this history to your book? Because you cannot remember anything. When I look at stuff, I remember better. But anyway, it's also just like one of those like touristy sites. They like dress up, they lightly roleplay, thankfully. I personally cannot take a full roleplay situation, so they lightly roleplay, which I appreciate. So it's not like full on. But yeah, and they have, you know, historical exhibits inside, and they do, you know, reenactment things and like drumming and stuff, but they also like hold events there and that sort of thing. It's like an event space as well. But anyway, I have them breaking into that, that whole place, and so I just wanted to kind of like make sure I understood everything. So that was good to go there. We also like toured, there's like a giant ship, like a, you know, like a leisure ship that they just like have docked that you can go and like tour around and look around, and I thought that might be like a venue or a possibility for the third book. So I wanted to go and see that. And I think there are some opportunities. I would definitely have to do some literary magic in order to make it a venue, because it is like, it's an in progress sort of thing. Like there's still like, there's lots of like exhibits and stuff, but they're still like fixing up certain places. And so I'd have to really do a little bit of literary magic to like make it so that you could host an event there. So that's something I would have to work on. But yeah, so that was really cool getting to see that as well. And Was there anything else? Lots of on-campus stuff. So went on campus, took tons of pictures and like video for promotion, which is great. So now I'm gonna have like a lot of that that I can share and use. So very, very happy about that, because this time I remembered to actually bring the book with me so that I could take pictures with my ARC. And so that's great. Now I have tons of pictures and videos, which is amazing. I can use that for promotion and for putting together. I usually like to do like a little like trailer when the book comes out to kind of show, or at least like close to the book coming out or a week after. We'll see what timing is. Sometimes my publisher does a little like cover animation for me, and then I'll post that on the day, and maybe I'll post the trailer a little bit later to refresh it in people's minds. But now I have some like footage from the actual area, because of course it's like impossible to find stock footage that's specific. So yeah, very happy to have done all of that, and took lots of notes and that sort of thing. So I have some stuff to update for the second book and some stuff that I can put in for the third book, though I'm sure that next year I will still once again go to Kingston to do more like, well, for one, I probably want to take promotional photos with the second book, and then for another I do some like additional research once I'm there, that sort of thing. But yeah, overall a very good, very fruitful research trip, which I was very happy about. And so yeah, very excited about that, looking forward to that whenever, you know, my lineouts will come sort of sometime in June. Now I'm going to do a little reading update followed by a book haul. So if that is not your thing, totally cool. I will see you next month. But if you're interested in the things that I've been reading and like books that I've gotten, then yeah, stick around for this. First book I want to talk about is Gifted and Talented by Olivie Blake. I read this actually entirely, I was gonna say mostly, but entirely on audio, and I absolutely loved it. Definitely like one of my favorite reads of the year. It's just like the voice is so good. It's so like it's so enchanting. It's like an omniscient narrator who is like very cheeky and like makes little comments about the characters as they're narrating, and it's just like such an interesting narration style. And it's just like, yeah, it's just the sort of voice that I like automatically fell in love with, because it's just so like snarky and fun, and just interesting. And I mean, I do love a book about rich people squabbles, so I enjoy that. But Gifted and Talented, essentially it's about this world in which sort of like technology and magic have kind of been mixed, and there are these three siblings, and they are the children of this like billionaire like tech magic company, and their father dies, and there's some, you know, there's a bit of a squabble about inheritance, but it's mostly about the places in life where the three siblings are, and trying to sort of reconcile with their lives and like the legacy they've been chasing, but also like the way in which they've been like chasing, impressing their father, or trying to sort of like get love from their father, and how that has kind of played out with this interesting sort of like mix of magic and technology on top of it. So that's why I ended up picking up a copy. I was like 75% into the audiobook, and I was just like, I already know this is going to be one of my favorite books of the year, so I'm just going to go ahead and buy a copy. So when I was in Kingston at the indie bookstore there that I like to go every time, Novel Idea, if you're ever in Kingston, Ontario. And so I just like was like, I'm just gonna pick up a copy. So I got it, and here I have it, and very excited. It's just so good, so good. And then otherwise, what was I reading? I've started getting super into webtoons and webcomics. I got a subscription to Manta, where you can like read these webcomics, and it's like on your phone, but it's like vertical vertical sort of formatting, so it's meant to like for you to just like read and scroll through on your phone, and I have become completely obsessed with it. They're really like their manhwas, like I think the whole platform, like I think and I believe that all of the kind of like webcomics on there are all like Korean made, so like manhwa, and yeah, I've just like been obsessed with it. What are some of the ones I read? Semantic Error was one I read, which is like a college set gay romance. And then now I've been reading I think it's called I've Become a True Villainess, which is like a second world fantasy about a woman that gets dropped into a story, and she's in the body of the villain, and the villain gets like killed at the end, so she's trying to like do everything to like fix her reputation, and there's also a romance. Yeah, I've just been plowing through so many of these. I got the subscription. It was like $5 a month, and I was like, I like pre-canceled. I was like, I'm gonna be over this by the time this month comes around. And instead I ended up subscribing for the more expensive one. Because some of these things you can only some of them you can only access with these like gems. I hate these sorts of systems, but anyway, they've got me. They've totally sucked me into their web. So that's how I am. I've just been reading a bunch of those. Sometimes they don't work, and I read like a few of them and I'm like, I don't really think this is for me. But I've like some of them I've kept on with very obsessively. So that's what I've been doing. And then finally for my reading, I finished the first book. Is it called? I think it's the Beasts of Gatamora series. I will pop up a cover. It's by Elizabeth Stevens. I read what is out so far of her Population series, which is like a dystopian romantasy sort of series, and loved it, and I'm obsessed with it. The series isn't finished yet. I think there are, how many books did I read? 3 books. I think there's supposed to be 5, so I think there's 2 more coming. So I was reading that and obsessed with that. So then I was like, okay, what else have you got? And I started reading her Beasts of Gatamora series, which the first book, the first book is called Dark City Omega, and it's an Omegaverse sort of story, but you know, second world fantasy, and this kind of Omega girl is like sort of thrown out of her beta compound because now she's an Omega. It's a whole Omegaverse thing. I was like, I don't want to get into explaining the Omegaverse stuff, but it's a secondary world fantasy, and basically it's like a enemies to lovers sort of thing. Yeah, I would check out the description of the book because it would do a better job than I am doing currently, because I'm currently doing a horrible job. But yeah, I just love Elizabeth Stevens stuff, so I have been working my way through the back catalog. And yeah, so, and also now I'm like, I feel like I'm deep into Omegaverse stuff. I watched this anime. It's called Tadaima Okaeri, which is like anyway, that's what it's called. I was like, do I need to explain this whole Japanese convention? I was like, I really don't. And I'm not the one for it. But it's an anime, and I didn't realize that it was like Omegaverse until I was like just watching it, and then they started talking about like Omegas and like alphas and betas and stuff, and they really don't explain it. At the heart of it, it's like a sweet, just like family sort of drama thing, like, you know, just like they're like raising their kids and stuff. It's just like, it's like super cute. That sort of anime, but then they had all this Omegaverse stuff, and I was like, oh, okay. And then once I had watched like the full season, I was like, maybe I'm interested in Omegaverse stuff. And then it just so happened that the next Elizabeth Stevens book that I had found was an Omegaverse one, and now I feel like I just keep popping into Omegaverse stuff. So yeah, that's, now I feel like I've fully inducted into the Omegaverse stuff. I am trying to read Bride by Ali Hazelwood, but it is on hold for the library, and I've been on hold for weeks now, so we'll see if it ends up coming through, so I can read that one as well, since I continue to be in my romantasy bag. But anyway, let's go ahead and do this book haul now. I got Midnight Rooms by Danya Coles. This book I actually read in audio a while ago, and I loved it so much. It's like a gothic, sort of like a gothic horror romance, as much as gothics have romance. If you are familiar with gothics as a genre, you know, the romance is, it's complicated, but essentially it's about this girl, and she has sort of been adopted into this family, but they don't really want her. They're trying to get rid of her, so they try and like foist her off on this lord, who she is going to have to marry, but she ends up actually like finding that he is different than she expected, and like very like kind and welcoming, and so they get married and go to his estate, and then weird stuff starts happening, which I feel like is like a wonderful classic gothic setup. But it's just like, it's so good, it's so eerie, the writing is really beautiful. I really liked the character, and like the unfolding of what happens in the story is also really, really good. And so, yeah, I've really enjoyed it. And so I was like, I need to get myself a physical copy. And so, yeah, that's Midnight Rooms by Danya Coles. And then I got The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor Laval. I have been meaning to read this, and I keep meaning to read it and meaning to read it. And so I finally was like, I'm just gonna get a copy. And I love this like new cover they did. I think it's really cool. So I just know it's a horror by Victor Laval. It's historical, maybe, and yeah, I just like keep meaning to read it, so I was like, I'm just gonna pick up a copy of it. And yeah, I mean, it's a novella, it's pretty thin, so yeah. And then I got 3 of the Crowns of Naxia series. I've been reading this just like on Kindle Unlimited, but I'm really obsessed with it, by Caressa Broadbent. I'm really obsessed with the series, and so I have been slowly like trying to collect the hardcovers as I find them, because they have like really cool, like, hold on. They have really cool like under jacket art. Oh my gosh, there we go. So they have really cool like under jacket art and that sort of thing on the hardcovers, and so I wanted to get the hardcovers, so I've just been like slowly kind of like doing that as I find them. And so I have, this is one of the novellas, and then 2 of the books. This is really from each of the duologies, and then the new book is coming out this year, which I will be getting. I will be reading. So yeah, I've been loving it. So I've just been like slowly collecting. So I guess there would be 4 books once the new one comes out, and 2 or 3 novellas. I can't remember how much I've read. But anyway, I'm just like slowly getting around to collecting them. And it's a fantasy romance about this like world that has like, I guess like the predominant creature are vampires, but there's lots of other different sort of like mythical creatures and beings, but vampires I would say is the big one. It's like following each of the sort of different types of vampires, and like some vampires have like wings and that sort of thing. I am doing a terrible job at this, but that is the gist of the whole thing. Then I got Silver Elite by Danny Francis as my book of the month pick, because I saw it had sprayed edges and it was like a dystopian romantasy, and again, because I'm in my romantasy bag, I was like, let me grab it. And then right after I grabbed it is when I feel like I like started seeing an explosion of people like talking about the book, and I was like, oh wow, I didn't like, because it was, you know, it gave me that sort of like Fourth Wing feeling, as where I like hadn't heard about it, and then like right as it was coming out, it felt like now I'm hearing about it absolutely everywhere. So yeah, so it's my book of the month pick, and so you know, it's very cool. But yeah, like it's like a dystopian sort of romantasy is my feeling, and because I've really loved the dystopian romantasy I've read from Elizabeth Stevens, I was like, okay, I would be into that. It's up my alley, so I got that as my book of the month pick. And then I also got Lights Out by Nevessa Allen. This was a total, like, I'm seeing it everywhere, and so I picked it up sort of thing. I think my library hold wait was just like, it was so long. And also I could get it on audio through Spotify, but these days I'm like super into physically reading. It's honestly wild that I read Gifted and Talented on audio, which the audio narrator is so good, so I would recommend reading Gifted and Talented on audio, but these days I'm more just reading things physically, and so I didn't want to read it on audio, so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna pick up a copy. So Lights Out, it's an adult dark romance, to my understanding, like a stalker romance. But yeah, I don't know, people seem to be saying it's really good. And I was like, I don't want to wait for a library hold. I do in fact want to read it right now. So I just picked it up. So I will probably actually be reading it pretty quickly, pretty soon. So yeah. What does it say on the back? A dark romance like you've never seen before. Can you handle the ride? We will see. We will see. Last but not least, I got a physical copy of Blood Over Brighthaven. I read this as an ebook from the library and I loved it. This is one of my favorite reads of the year. I talked about it in a previous vlog, but it's basically, I would call it, it's interesting. It's like a high fantasy, and it has a lot of the hallmarks of dark academia, and I mean, she's like working within a university program, but it's basically this world has these high mages that basically help make the world go round. They use the magic to protect this city that is essentially under a dome, because outside of it there is this blight which is killing people. And so the high mages, it's like this sort of like very interesting like magic sort of steampunky-esque world in which they're using magic to kind of basically control everything that people have, like the electricity that people have, the water that they get, all of that is powered by magic. And it is this magic that is like very scientific and like very specific, and like there's a very specific sort of study of it. And we're following the first female high mage in the history of this society, and basically the slow unfolding as she sort of realizes the reality of this society that she's a part of, and the reality of, you know, magic. So it is amazing. I loved it so much. Believe the hype. Believe the hype on this one. And I was in the bookstore and I was like, oh, I should get a physical copy because I love it so much. And I was like, if it has that sprayed edge, I'm gonna buy it. And it did. So here I am. I in fact am very, very encouraged by sprayed edges. I just like, it's just pretty. It's just pretty and it's nice and it makes it feel special. And so yeah, I've got my now I have my own copy, which I love so much. And you know, when a book is like a favorite of the year, I was like, I really do want to have a copy of it. So I'm happy that I have one. So I also got this at Novel Idea when I was there. So yeah, that is it for the whole book haul, which I hope is enjoyable. And yeah, that's it for this writing vlog. I feel like this was a positive month. I think it was a difficult month in the beginning as I was working on Slug book and doing all that stuff, but I feel like it's ended on like a really solid note. I think doing a bit of like the traveling and the book stuff and reading and that sort of thing, I feel like that was really helpful in rounding out the month very nicely. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to jumping into June. But yeah, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. Bye!
Deja